Quinlan turned to her, forcing a grin, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. More scared than I ever thought I could be. He paused, glancing back toward their companions, who were still gathered under the gnarled oak. We need to talk about what just happened. We can't just brush this off. Yes, but we also need a plan, Fiora replied, trying to mask her own tremors with conviction. She leaned against the tree, the rough surface a stark contrast to the softness of her expression. What did it want? That's what we need to figure out, Quinlan replied, motioning for the others to come closer. The group huddled around, a mix of apprehension and fragmented camaraderie flickering like sparks in the damp darkness. First rule, we don't split up again, Lana declared, her voice firm yet tremulous. A recent graduate with an affinity for haunting folklore, she rummaged through her oversized backpack, pulling out worn books. I remember my grandma saying something about protection rites. We can try those. Right, like throwing salt around is going to do something against whatever that was, Aaron scoffed, folding his muscular arms, his eyes shifting uneasily between Quinlan and Fiora. Look, we're all just a bunch of amateurs. That thing, it's powerful. Which is exactly why we need to band together, Fiora urged, stepping closer to Aaron. It's not going to care what spells we recite unless we're united. Silence ensued, the weight of uncertainty settling over them. Each member wrestled with the fear now twisted into their thoughts. Henning, the jokester of the group, broke the tension as he burst out. Well, if we all die, at least we'll have some killer ghost stories on our hands, right? A nervous chuckle trickled into the air, though it couldn't mask the underlying dread. Let's stick to the living for now, Quinlan said, his tone striving for lightness, yet his heart felt heavy with unease. He met Fiora's gaze, and for a heartbeat, the connection was palpable, a tension that pulled them closer together. First, we need a safe place to camp out, Hannah suggested, her brow furrowed. Somewhere, the sudden shrieking of an unseen creature shattered the moment, silence applying its weight again. The laughter faded, leaving behind the low thrum of panic. Quinlan felt his stomach twist as he locked eyes with Fiora. Her expression mirrored his own tumultuous feelings, a mixture of fear and something deeper, barely contained. Let's go deeper into the forest, Quinlan proposed, drawing on every ounce of bravado he could muster. He gestured toward the cover of trees beyond, shadows mingling with the unknown. Deeper? Are you insane? Aaron protested, glancing over his shoulder as if he could feel the entity lurking. We stick together, Quinlan insisted, his voice firm but softening as he turned to Fiora. Right? Yeah, together, she echoed, her determination igniting a flicker of hope in him. Their eyes lingered, a silent agreement coursing between them, electrifying and tender amid the chaos. As their path wound deeper into the dense woods, Fiora reached out to grab Quinlan's hand, anchoring herself in the rising tide of dread. In that brief moment of connection, the world around them faded. Their lives, the chaos, the darkness, it all became a mere backdrop to a sweetness they both had longed for. He hesitated, almost lost in the moment, and the wild heartbeat of adventure transformed into a rhythm of something else entirely, a burgeoning intimacy sparked by that indescribable bond. The allure was tantalizing, but shadows loomed too closely, reminding them of the perilous mission ahead. Let's make a pact, Quinlan said, pulling back slightly, his breath catching as he broke the moment, each word deliberate and weighing heavily. Whatever comes next, we fight together. Deal, Fiora whispered, her voice steady, though her heart raced in agreement. With that, they pushed onward, but the air felt different, charged with tension, hope, and the ever-looming specter of terror trailing behind them. 12 seeking refuge. The moon hung low in the dimly lit sky, casting long shadows across the battered ruins of the old chapel where the group had sought shelter. Night breathed cold and heavy, clinging to their skin like a shroud. Dry leaves rustled, whispering warnings in the dark, while the distant echo of an owl gave voice to their mounting anxieties. Quinlan Vex sat on a splintered pew, legs sprawled, grappling with the chill that gnawed at his bones. The weight of memories, of laughter, stories, and wrong turns pressed down upon him. Fiora Lise moved about the room, her fingers brushing the rough stone walls as she tried to ground herself. A flicker of lamplight caught the worry in her eyes, shadowed under the glow. She hesitated before turning toward Quinlan, her voice a soft melody in the tense silence. "We should establish a watch, just in case." Quinlan raised his gaze, meeting her earnest summer blue eyes. The warmth she radiated contrasted sharply with the icy chill that surrounded them, yet he felt the gnawing tension in every shared glance. "Yeah," he replied, forcing lightness into his voice. "I'll take first shift. I could use the beauty rest," he joked, a boyish grin creeping onto his lips, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Fiora's smile faltered. She bit her lower lip slightly as uncertainty loomed. "I don't think it's funny, Quinn. We need to be serious about this." Her tone was firm, but her heart had begun to race in a mix of fear and unfulfilled desires. Watching her, Quinlan's playful demeanor shifted as he leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Fiora, look, I'm just trying to keep it light. Meanwhile, across the chapel, Marlon and Claire huddled together in whispered conversation, their faces half lit by the flickering lamp. Marlon, his lanky frame coiled like a tight spring, held Claire's hand with an intensity that spoke of shared fear and something more. "Do you think it can sense our fears?" Marlon asked, a tremor in his voice, not quite masking the edge of desperation. "I mean, it's a ghost story come to life, isn't it?" Claire replied, her lavender eyes wide, sparking with playful mischief even in their peril. "Let's just hope it's one of those friendly ghosts and not a grumpy one." Their laughter broke the tense air, but it was unsure, mingled with anxiety. Fiora caught the exchange from the corner of her eye, feeling a twinge of jealousy. The warmth Marlon offered Claire was something she craved yet couldn't quite articulate. "Okay, let's set up the watch," Karen said, interrupting the moment, her voice firm. With raven hair framing her face and determination set in her green eyes, she surveyed the group. "Quinn, you take first? 2 hours? Then I'll go." "Sounds good," Quinlan nodded, trying to shake the feeling heavy in his stomach. As the group settled into their roles, Quinlan kept his eyes on Fiora, stealing glances that said too much but lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken thoughts. When she caught him, their eyes locked, a fleeting moment that sent electricity sparking through the air between them. "Could you at least pretend to stay awake?" Fiora teased, a faint blush on her cheeks. The closeness made the air thrum with tension, as if the very walls listened to their unvoiced emotions. Quinlan chuckled. "I'll have you know, I'm a master at pretending." "You're not the only one." Fiora curled her fingers into the fabric of her jacket, seeking solace. "We all have our secrets." Ben chimed in from the far corner, snorting as he threw a casual arm around his girlfriend. "Secrets? The only thing we need to worry about tonight is that ghost and whether we have enough flashlights. You'd think we'd be the ghost stories from the campfire alone." Amidst the laughter, Alonso, furthest from them, leaned against the cold stone wall, a frown etched deep in his brow. "Maybe the ghost doesn't want to tell jokes," he said bitterly. "What if it wants something more than just to scare us?" Quinlan sighed, wrestling with the gambit of light-hearted jokes and underlying dread. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," he promised, the truth sinking deeper as he looked around at every face present. He felt the line between laughter and terror blur, the weight of surviving more significant than the emotions that hung between him and Fiora. He tightened his grip on the pew, wishing he could draw on that connection for strength when the moment came. As they settled into their imposed roles, each heartbeat echoed through the chapel, loud against the silence around them. "Just know," Fiora said softly, taking a breath and letting it out slowly, "I won't let you take the fall for anyone." "Yeah," Quinlan whispered back, heat rising before their eyes briefly met again, the air thick with unarticulated words begging to be spoken. "We'll see." And as the clock ticked dangerously close to their fateful hour, Quinlan couldn't shake the feeling that laughter was the only shield they had left, but it wouldn't be enough to keep the darkness at bay. Scene 13. Unraveling Friendships. The flickering light from the lantern day across the rough-hewn walls of the abandoned cabin, shadows twisting and curling like ghosts eager to join the unfolding drama. In the cramped living room, Brittany leaned forward, her brow furrowed. The tension in the air hummed like a taut string, nearly snapping with the weight of unspoken words. "Aiden," she said, her voice low but fierce, "are you sure you're not hiding something? Like, I don't know, your intentions?" Her eyes searched his, trying to untangle his motives in the dim light as the ground outside moaned under an uncertain wind. Aiden shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. "What do you mean?" "Come on, this isn't the time for trust issues," he replied, gesturing around to the group sprawled over mismatched furniture, oblivious to their brewing storm. Only Quinlan, sitting against the wall with his arms folded, locked his gaze onto Aiden, disappointment flickering in his eyes. "Isn't it?" Brittany shot back, her voice rising. "You volunteered to lead the ghost hunt like you knew something we didn't." There was an undercurrent of vulnerability in her tone, a slicing insecurity that had slipped through her facade of certainty. Fiora, nervously biting her nail, glanced between them, trying to diffuse the tension. "Guys, this was supposed to be fun. Why are we turning on each other?" Her attempt at levity fell flat, like a balloon popping in an awkward silence. "Because this isn't just ghosts anymore, Fiora." Brittany's voice trembled slightly as she gestured to the walls. "This place feels wrong, and Aiden always seems too calm for someone who's being chased by an entity from another realm." Aiden's expression hardened. "You think I called this upon us? You really think I'd risk everyone's lives?" "Maybe not consciously," Quinlan interjected, pushing himself off the wall with a sigh, standing tall between the two. "But your choices led us here, man. Can't you see that?" His words cut deep, slicing through years of camaraderie and trust. Brittany couldn't hold back a laugh, bitter and sharp. "What do you want, Aiden? For us to just roll with it while you act like everyone's best buddy?" She folded her arms, taking a small step back, the line between protector and provocateur blurring. "Enough, both of you." Fiora raised her voice, the warmth she exuded typically soothing turning heated. "Can't we just focus on surviving? That's what matters." As the friends erupted into a cacophony of half-formed arguments, the swirling tension cracked the atmosphere. It was as if air and emotion fused, melding into a tempest. But amid the storm, Aiden stepped closer to Brittany, his voice dropping. "Maybe I'm scared, okay? We're all scared." A moment of unexpected honesty hung suspended. His vulnerability seeped through, as if his bravado had been stripped away by the imminent threat surrounding them. Brittany's expression softened, her rigid posture wavering as she recognized the fear etched on his face. "You," she breathed, hesitation mingling with the fresh vulnerability coursing between them. But before she could gather her emotions, Quinlan's gaze shifted to the window, the shadows of trees outside flickering with a menacing life of their own. "You think this entity wants us to turn on each other? Divide and conquer," he muttered under his breath. The air chilled perceptibly, drawing everyone's focus back to the growing darkness outside, creeping into their already frayed bond. "What if it knows what we're thinking? What if it's feeding off our fears?" Fiora suggested, echoing a fear that gripped each heart in the cabin. "Then we have to stick together," Aiden insisted, glancing at each of them, maintaining eye contact with Brittany. "We can get through this, but we can't let it get to us. Not now." Quinlan's frown deepened, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders now more than ever. "Maybe starting with honesty," he said, "would be a good step forward." His gaze caught Aiden's, a challenge floating silently. Yet Brittany's heart was still in turmoil, a tempest of emotions. "You guys, I don't want to lose anyone," she murmured, realizing how fragile their connections had become. She reached for Aiden's hand, the bridge of their previous argument slowly collapsing. But Aiden hesitated, an ambivalence flaring in his eyes. "Trust takes time, Brittany, but I'll be honest. I swear." His solemn promise echoed through their fragile fabric of friendship, leaving the door ajar for reconciliation or further discord, just as the shadows grew bolder outside. "Then let's fight together," Brittany said, squeezing his hand as the others nodded, united by the fear but tethered by hope. The depths of their emotions mingled, a bond knitting tighter amid looming shadows, setting the stage for deeper revelations to come. Scene 14. Scraps of Hope. The flickering candlelight cast wild shadows on the walls of the old cabin, their shapes writhing like tortured souls. Quinlan Vex huddled close to the tiny flame, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to focus. If we can connect with a friendly spirit, maybe it can guide us," he urged, keeping his voice level despite the flicker of panic beneath his calm exterior. Fiora Lise busied herself across the table, her fingers trembling slightly as she sorted through the scattered pages of notes and drawings. Each sketch, a ghostly visage or cryptic symbol, marked their mind-bending journey into the unknown. What if we can't reach anyone? What if we? Her breath hitched, caught between the weight of her fears and the dim hope of their endeavor. Fiora, keep it together, interrupted Jace, his lips twitching into a wry smile, trying to inject levity into the suffocating tension. What do you think those spirits will say? Welcome to the afterlife. Enjoy the complimentary snacks. The group erupted into a chorus of half-hearted laughter, only to be met with an echoing silence. Their shared mirth hung, tenuous and fragile, like a weak thread holding their fraying sanity together. Okay, Clara piped up, glancing at the group with a spark of determination in her eyes. What about that salt circle from last month? It might keep out the bad guys while we try to summon one of the good ones. Her voice rang with a blend of the brave and the naive, because the more they unraveled, the more their chances of survival dwindled. Salt? You really think we have time to set up a protection ritual? Balked Milo, his freckled face flushed with frustration. We're barely holding ourselves together. Quinlan raised a hand, not wanting to escalate the argument. Let's try it. What do we have to lose besides our minds? He shifted his gaze to Fiora, the unspoken bond between them deepening into something unacknowledged yet palpable. She met his eyes, and for a moment the chaos melted into a quiet understanding. Fine, huffed Milo, accepting defeat. But if we draw out an angry ghost because of this, I'm blaming you. As Clara gathered the salt, the tension enveloped Fiora and Quinlan like velvet, highlighted by their gentle proximity at the wooden table. Fiora's innate curiosity shone through as she asked, "What do you hope to hear? A revered ghost giving us tips on the afterlife?" Her laughter, light yet heavy with weight, washed over him, forcing Quinlan to mask a grin. "I'm hoping for a friendly chat and perhaps a date with the ghost of Christmas future," he quipped, the flicker of his usual humor returning, though there was an edge of desperation wavering just beneath the surface. The laughter that followed felt like a bandage over a wound that was all too deep, yet it sparked something raw and vulnerable in Fiora. "Why do you always act like it's a joke, Quinlan? Just take a moment to breathe. We're fighting for our lives here. Because if I don't, I might just break down, Fiora. We can't afford to lose hope." The air between them pulsed with unresolved emotions, heavy with the gravity of their shared past. The moment entwined with every other secret they had left unspoken. "Maybe hope is the only thing we have," Fiora bit out, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and as Quinlan stared into her eyes, he felt the universe shift. "Look," Jace interjected, desperately diverting the growing tension. "Who says ghosts can't be funny? My grandma told me about a ghost who only haunted the living to win their love. It was a complete bummer for him." Laughter erupted again, but it skirted the edges of pain rather than pinching it away. "Right, just what we need, a ghost chasing after our love lives," Clara chimed in, playfully rolling her eyes. "Do you think it'll help me with my Tinder profile?" "Only if we can make it a ghostly-themed party," added Fiora, laughter mingling with the glimmers of hope that flickered in the dim light, the laughter soothing their agitated spirits, if ever so briefly. Yet deep down, the dread lingered like a shadow that refused to fade as they began sprinkling salt into a rough circle. Quinlan's heart raced. "Okay, let's summon whatever we can. Lady Ghost, Mr. Spectre, anyone who will listen." As the candle flickered, something echoed beyond the walls of the cabin, a whisper like brittle leaves dancing in despair. Their laughter faded, replaced by an all-encompassing silence. Quinlan, feeling the rush of warmth surrounding his body, whispered, "We're going to be okay. We have each other, and—" He hesitated as the darkness loomed closer. "That has to count for something." Dare to explore. The chill that swept through the clearing felt alive, biting at exposed skin and curling its icy fingers into the seams of worn jackets. Quinlan Vex stood at the edge of their camp, watching dark clouds ripple overhead like a pack of shadows gathering for a hunt. His breath hung heavy in the air as he watched his friends gather around the flickering campfire, casting nervous glances toward the dense thicket beyond. Aiden, his ever-venturesome spirit unyielding, turned to Brittany, a feigned bravado in his voice. "What do you guys think? That abandoned cabin over there looks like it's seen some action. Maybe it's hiding something cool or spooky." Either way, it could be fun. Brittany folded her arms, arching an eyebrow. Fun? You mean terrifying. We're all on the edge as it is. This isn't just a casual ghost hunt, Aiden. Quinlan and Fiora, who sat close, exchanged a look filled with tension. She grinned slightly, her eyes dancing, yet a shadow of doubt settled over her features. I mean, it could have clues on how to deal with whatever that thing is. The ghostly entity they had unwittingly unleashed still loomed heavily in their thoughts. Or we end up missing, Aiden persisted, his bravado fading into a nervous laugh. Come on, what's a little exploration among friends? Yeah, in the dark, with an ancient being that wants to rip our throats out? Quinlan shook his head, the humor around him crumbling as he leaned forward in concern. It's not like horror movies don't teach us anything. We don't need a jump scare for a plot twist. Fiora put a reassuring hand on his knee, her warmth contrasting the encroaching cold. Quinn, you're scared. And I get it, we all are. But if we find something, maybe it means we can finally take charge. The group remained silent, hearts racing as each weighed the prospect of the venture against the unseen terror they faced. Why not? It could be a beautiful metaphor for our lives, Aiden blurted out, attempting thin comic relief. We're venturing into the unknown to seize the day, right? Or to die trying, Brittany replied dryly. Suddenly, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, illuminating the path toward the cabin. The tension in the air crackled, and Quinlan felt the weight of responsibility pushing down on him. We should leave it be. No good ever comes from poking around abandoned places. What if something follows us back? His words seemed to dissolve as the wind howled, tousling their hair and sending an unsettling whisper through the trees. But it was Aiden's unwavering enthusiasm that broke through. Didn't you say once that confronting your fears is the only way to find peace, Quinn? This is our chance. With that, a collective sigh of regret swept through the group. They had come too far to turn back now. A sense of urgency enveloped them. All right, fine, Quinlan relented, though the pit in his stomach tightened. But we stick together. No one wanders off. Got it? As Brittany and Aiden led the way, Fiora nudged Quinlan with a smile that was meant to ease rather than ignite fear. I trust you with my life, Quinn, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, the intimacy of her tone sending warmth through him. Just don't say that if we end up as ghost snacks, Quinlan shot back with forced levity, but her closeness rendered him momentarily speechless. Every step toward the cabin felt like a step into the maw of something ancient and bitter. The door creaked ominously in the wind, a dissonant prelude to discovery. As Aiden pushed the cabin door open, it groaned like the last breath of an old memory, revealing a dust-choked interior strewn with relics of forgotten lives. Shadows danced across peeling walls, reminding them of everything they had tried to leave behind. With a deep breath, Quinlan stepped inside, feeling the heavy, lingering gaze of something beyond the veil pressing down upon him. Okay, let's see if this is a treasure trove or a tomb. Suddenly, just as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, laughter erupted from Aiden, the sound striking like a bolt of desperate hope. Or maybe a real haunt. Time for ghost stories that come with a service warning, huh? They all chuckled uneasily, but the laughter felt thin against the encroaching night. As darker shadows crept from the corners of the room, they could feel eyes somewhere watching. And as they began their investigation, flickering lights interfered with expectations of safety, igniting a far deeper conflict among them than mere fear of the dark. Scene 16. Dark Secrets Revealed. The air inside the cabin was thick and heavy, laden with the scent of damp wood mixed with the faintest whiff of something long forgotten. Outside, the wind howled like a wounded animal, rattling the shutters and sending flurries of snow dancing against the windows, the storm intensifying with each passing minute. Quinlan pored over an old trunk in the corner, dust motes swirling like lost souls in the beam of his flashlight. Do you think it's too late for us to just drive back? Fiora's voice trembled slightly, betraying her rising apprehension as she brushed her fingertips against the edges of an antique mirror. The reflection was so cloudy it seemed to obscure her image, just like the shadows creeping into their minds. It's never too late to run, Quinlan replied, chuckling darkly, though his eyes darted to the door, as if expecting it to fly open. But where would we go? Back to our lives? When this thing is right on our heels, Mara interjected, her voice quivering with a mix of excitement and fear as she stood near a dusty bookshelf filled with decrepit volumes. Guys, look at this. She pulled an ancient book from the shelf, its spine crumbling in her hands. This could tell us something about whatever we stirred up. The group gathered closer, curiosity momentarily overshadowing their fright. A flickering lantern cast ghostly shapes across their faces, illuminating their expressions of dread and daring. As Mara began to read, the tension thickened. It says here that the entity was once a man, betrayed by those he trusted, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. He's bound to this plane by vengeance. A small gasp escaped Adrian, who had wandered to a nearby wall adorned with odd primordial symbols. You mean he's just like us, feeling lost and angry? That's awful. He scribbled nonsense in his notepad, desperate to capture every detail, oblivious to the suffocating gloom. Awful? Brian smirked, rolling his eyes. Sounds like a typical Monday to me. His jest fell flat against the weight of realization settling around them. Shh! Fiora hissed, her eyes darting toward a shadow shifting just beyond their sight. We shouldn't joke about this. This entity wants revenge, and we might have just given it a reason to focus on us. With that, the group fell silent, tension spinning like a web around them. Quinlan glanced at Fiora, his heart thundering against his ribcage as their eyes locked. The electric connection shimmered briefly, a reminder of the bonds eclipsed by fear. Maybe we should stick together, he murmured, stepping a bit closer to her. We can't let whatever this is tear us apart. The plea was palpable, shrouded in the unspoken fear of losing something vital. Before Fiora could respond, a loud bang echoed from outside, shaking the cabin's very foundation. A collective gasp escaped their lips. Suddenly, the once vibrant banter turned into a chorus of anxious murmurs. Okay, who's going to check that out? Said Adrian, his bravado deflating under the weight of palpable dread. I'll do it, Quinlan declared, unable to mask the quiver in his voice. He knew what was at stake here, not just their survival, but their intertwined destinies hanging in the balance. As Quinlan reached for the door, a sudden gust of wind howled again, this time colder, as if something unspeakable lay just beyond the cabin walls. The shadows seemed to shift, deepening and unfurling like tendrils of darkness with a life of their own. It crept toward them, wrapping around each of their hearts, tightening until they could hardly breathe. Gazing back at his friends, Quinlan asserted, "Whatever it is, we face it together. Secrets can't save us." He felt Fiora's hand brush against his, the warmth of her touch igniting a small flame of courage within him. As they braced themselves against the storm raging both outside and inside, the ancients' whispers danced through their minds, urgent yet indecipherable. Amidst the tempest, the cabin trembled. They had disturbed the past, and now it was coming for them. Mara's voice cut through the rising tension. We need to find a way to stop this, or understand it. Her determination was fire, but fear flickered behind her steel resolve. Together, we can find the truth, Quinlan said softly. That truth was bending toward them, dark and unavoidable, and as the wind shrieked outside, they felt the entity's presence tightening around them like a tattered blanket. What have we truly awakened? Fiora thought, her heart pounding in synchrony with the haunted cries echoing around them. The night was far from over, scene 17, confronting the past. The winds howled outside the dilapidated cottage, each gust like a troubled soul trying to claw its way back from the shadows. Quinlan Vex stood near the center of the dim-lit room, a heavy wooden table cluttered with relics of lost time, their ghostly explorations left behind, each item a reminder of their foolish curiosity. Dust motes danced in the flickering light of oil lamps, casting restless shadows on the walls that seemed to contort and twist in mockery of their fears. Fiora Lace paced nervously beside him, her bright eyes flickering between him and the rough-hewn door. We shouldn't have come here. This place, it feels wrong, as if it knows us. Quinlan ran a hand through his tousled hair, frustration bubbling just beneath his playful facade. Right now, I just want to focus on getting out of here. The last thing we need is doubt creeping in. As if in response, the relics on the table rattled, the air thickening with unspoken dread. A porcelain doll, cracked and leering, seemed to stare straight at Fiora. She shivered and squeezed her eyes shut, memories flooding back. an unresolved fight with her parents after she declared her intentions to travel the world, a decision they deemed reckless. "Fiora?" Quinlan asked. I, I can't shake the feeling they were right, she murmured, vulnerability slipping through her defiant demeanor. Traveling is just running away from my responsibilities. A sudden thump echoed from the upstairs bedroom, the sound reverberating through the floorboards like a heartbeat. Fiora jumped, pressing closer to Quinlan. "Please tell me that wasn't in my head. I swear it feels like we're being watched." "It's just the wind," Quinlan replied, yet unease crept into his voice. "We need to confront the entity, not our inner demons." "Let's not." But the walls seemed to sigh, and with another violent gust, they heard a familiar voice call from upstairs. It was Lila, their friend, her voice dripping with urgency. "Quinlan, Fiora, you need to see this. It's about us." Before they could respond, a shadow flickered past the window, momentarily obscuring the thickening twilight outside. Quinlan pushed down the fluttering panic rising within him. The history and pain of the past would soon rise, unwelcome but unavoidable. A moment later, Layla burst into the room, her face pale but eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. "Guys, you won't believe what I found." She held up a yellowed photo, eroded around the edges, but unmistakably a group picture from their last ghost hunting trip, only now. Two of their friends were missing from the image. "Wait, where's Max and Jess?" Fiora exclaimed, dread knotting her stomach. "This must be some trick," but Lila shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, it gets worse. I heard them. They were here, in the shadows. It's like the house is feeding on our fears, our regrets." Fiora's breath quickened, and even Quinlan felt the weight of their past mistakes pressing against his chest. He had been there for Max's laugh, for Jess's stories, and now they were gone, replaced by ghosts of what could have been. Shouts erupted from the living room, where Ben and Sarah were engaged in a heated argument. "You always assumed the worst. What if your envy got us into this mess?" Ben's voice cracked, reverberating with raw emotion. "I'm trying to keep everyone safe, but your recklessness." Sarah retorted, her frustration bubbling violently. Quinlan rushed out, pulling the two apart as Fiora trailed behind him, her heart wild with rapid beats. "Come on, we need to focus on what's lurking outside, not each other." But even in the fray, whispers stirred like vine under the skin. Ben's voice softened. "Sarah?" "Stop, Ben. You think you know everything, but you don't," she snapped, only for the air to still around them, echoing with the unspoken fear. A sudden crash sounded from above, and Fiora gasped. "What if it knows our weaknesses? What if it's using that against us?" Quinlan glanced between them, feeling the tide shift around their growing animosity. "Look, we can't afford to blame each other. We either stand together or—" A cold laugh seemed to wrap around them, the air growing frigid as shadows deepened. Fear was palpable, creating a barrier between them, pulling them into a past that threatened to consume them all. "Let it come," Quinlan shouted suddenly, defiance raising his voice above the fear. "We face ourselves first. Only by confronting the past can we survive this together." As the winds howled and the floor shifted beneath them, the shadows lengthened, preparing to feed. Whether they could face their demons remained to be seen, but beneath their fear, the hope of reconciliation flickered strong. Scene 18, Fiora's Doubts. A chill swept through the old cabin, its wooden bones creaking under the weight of stories untold. Fiora stood in the scant light of a flickering lantern, chopping vegetables for what might be their final meal together. The knife struck against the cutting board with a dull rhythm, each slice echoing her inner turmoil. She could hear Quinlan in the next room, throwing his laughter at Aiden, their camaraderie like a balm over the creeping sense of dread that clung to her like the fog outside. "Are you sure you want to do this? It's only vegetables. We're facing a malevolent entity, not a pizza competition." Aiden's voice buzzed through the thin walls, playfully quipping, "Only if your ghost wasn't afraid of a little chopping." Quinlan shot back, his voice light yet edged with an undercurrent of tension. Fiora paused, her heart sinking a tad as she wiped her hands on her apron. A rush of warmth boiled within her, igniting a glimmer of jealousy. They were so comfortable, intertwined in laughter while her insides twisted. Quinlan's unpredictability made her smile, yet Aiden's quiet strength drew her in, a kind of grounding that she craved. "I'll help," she called back, trying to summon her enthusiasm. The sharp scent of garlic mingled with the earthy kaki of fresh zucchini, but all she tasted was confusion. When she entered the living room, the sight of them sitting close on the battered couch catalyzed a flush of warmth across her cheeks. Aiden looked up from the deck of cards he was shuffling, his hazel eyes meeting hers with a calmness that made her heart flutter. "Hey, we were just talking about funny ghost stories," Aiden said, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "You have one ready?" Quinlan leaned in closer, the flickering firelight casting shadow-dancing shapes across his face. "Or, maybe we should talk about how nobody's really been listening to you, Fiora. I'd love to hear more of those ghost-hunting adventures." Fiora felt the weight of his gaze. "I don't think that's necessary," she replied, trying to keep her tone light, but her voice trembled as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The atmosphere was charged, each tiny crackle palpable, making her risks feel tangible. "Of course it is. It's the perfect opportunity to remind us how not to get devoured by vengeful spirits," Quinlan grinned. "Or how to charm them," Aiden added, eyes twinkling. Fiora snorted, then pressed her lips together, glancing at Quinlan. I'm not feeling very funny right now. I was thinking more about how the shadows are closing in on us." Quinlan's smile dimmed slightly, but he nodded. "All right, let's shut the darkness out for a moment then. Tell us what you want to say. We'll listen." As she opened her mouth, Fiora was hit by the truth of it. They were all teetering on the brink, and here she was, caught between two souls she adored for very different reasons. A maelstrom of feelings surged within her, colliding and wrestling as she felt exposed, undeniably vulnerable. "Sometimes I feel like the ghost, Fiora murmured, her chin lifting defiantly. "Wanting to be a part of something while being terrified I'll only bring darkness." Aiden placed the cards down, his full attention on her. "Fiora, you light up the room. It's just the looming darkness that tries to steal our joy." Quinlan shifted closer, his hand brushing against Fiora's. "You mean everything to us. Don't let the shadows of fear diminish that." Her pulse quickened as their hands connected, warmth radiating from that point of touch. Their eyes locked, and in that highly charged silence, the air hummed with unspoken words. Fiora subconsciously leaned toward Quinlan, feeling that tug of desire meld with the reassurance from Aiden. "But if you," she hesitated, focusing on Aiden, "if you both have feelings, what happens to us? To our friendship?" "Fiora," Aiden started gently, his voice low and steady, "friendship creates its own path for us all. No matter how twisted it gets, we can make it work." "But can it survive a ghost?" Quinlan interjected, a flicker of lightness seeping back into his voice, albeit nervous. Fiora couldn't tell if she was left comforted or more confused by the situation. "Maybe," she said, her breath catching in her throat. "But what if my decisions lead to doom?" A weight settled between them, one that felt painfully intimate yet impossibly heavy. In that moment, Fiora realized it wasn't just the entity outside that haunted them. It was the invisible threads of desire and fear weaving seamlessly through their bonds. As laughter echoed back in, she knew they were standing at a precipice that demanded a choice rooted in the heart. "Let's face the darkness together and find out." Her brave whisper was both a promise and a plea, resonating deeply as the chill aligned with the fear, something unfathomably real encroaching upon the boundaries of their friendship. The fire crackled to life more fervently, matching the inner storm brewing within her heart. Scene 19, a tough decision. The air sour and tense, the faint glow of dusk wrapped around the clearing like a shroud. The sunlight battled to break through the thick canopy of branches overhead, dappling the ground with light and shadow, a precarious dance that felt eerily out of sync with the deepening sense of dread hanging over the group. Quinlan Vex leaned against a gnarled tree, the rough bark pressing into his back, grounding him against the fluttering anxieties swirling in his mind. His hands fidgeted in the pockets of his jacket as he glanced sideways at Fiora Lise, who knelt just a breath away, peering into an old, creaking trunk that had seen better days. "Do you think it might hide something?" she asked, her voice a soft melody entangled with hope and the pervasive tension that had become their uninvited companion. The way her brow furrowed slightly revealed a vulnerability that softened Quinlan's heart. and he swallowed hard against the urge to reach out and brush her hair away from her face. Could be, he replied, trying to keep his tone casual, masking the turmoil beneath. Every moment felt charged, like the tense second before a storm, and he found himself holding his breath, waiting for the sky to crack. As Fiora tilted her head, the last rays of sun painted her features in ethereal gold. There was a timeless beauty in her laughter, and Quinlan could feel the magnetic pull between them shifting the air. Just as their gazes locked, the silence thickened, charged with the weight of unspoken words and desires. The clearing, normally filled with crickets and late-afternoon bird chatter, fell into a hush, amplifying the gentle rustle of leaves. But it was then that Aiden Crow, with his swaggering confidence and easy smile, appeared at the edge of the clearing, a jarring note in the fragile harmony. "Hey, what are you two up to?" he called, a playful tilt to his voice that betrayed his complete lack of awareness of the charged atmosphere. Quinlan felt his shoulders tense, the moment fracturing as Fiora turned her attention to Aiden with a bright smile that cut like glass through the air between them. "Oh, nothing much. Just, checking this tree." She gestured toward the trunk, but her tone had shifted, the lightness replaced by something unsteady. Quinlan felt a scowl tugging at the corners of his mouth, but he fought to suppress it. "Hope you're not looking for ghosts," Aiden laughed, stepping closer, his presence dominating the clearing with an ease Quinlan could never muster. "You know they say they come out at twilight." "Very funny," Quinlan quipped, though his tone dripped with sarcasm. He glanced at Fiora, whose eyes sparkled with amusement at Aiden's antics. A mix of irritation and camaraderie twisted in his gut. "Seriously, guys, we should be more careful," Aiden added, rubbing the back of his neck. "What if that thing decides to come back?" The mention of the entity sent a shiver up Quinlan's spine, and he hated how Aiden's carefree attitude grated against the brewing storm in his heart. The shadows in the woods stretched long, and Quinlan could almost feel the darkness wrestling within, fueled by the clamor of emotions he struggled to control. "Maybe we should light a fire or something," Fiora suggested, trying to reclaim the fading sense of peace. "It might help us feel a bit safer." "Bet we could roast marshmallows," Aiden chimed, his flirtatious banter turning the air sparky. The slightest flicker of warmth danced in Fiora's eyes, her laughter helping to cover the tension, while Quinlan felt his insides twist tighter. "Right, because ghosts enjoy a good s'more," Quinlan deadpanned, but the attempt to inject humor felt hollow, a paper wall against the rising tide of jealousy threatening to spill over. Fiora's laughter faded as she caught Quinlan's uneasy gaze, her expression shifting. "Maybe we need to talk about what's really going on," she said, a hint of seriousness weaving into her tone. The swarm of thoughts hung suspended in the thickening air. Quinlan knew they couldn't ignore the shadows lurking around them. But before another word could slip through the crackling tension, Aiden clapped his hands together, breaking the moment. "Let's head back and set up some protection spells. Who knows? Might even conjure up some friendly spirits." As Aiden moved to gather the others, Quinlan lingered, feeling the weight of unvoiced words between him and Fiora. Just as he opened his mouth to bridge that gap, she turned her gaze north, where a chilling breeze rustled through the leaves. "I don't know if we'll make it through this," Quinlan suddenly said, the undertones of his sincere worry circling the unvoiced fears thrumming in each of them. "But we have to stick together." Fiora's eyes met his again, and in that electric moment, the uncertainty lay bare between them. Then, just as quickly, that connection splintered again when Aiden called from a distance. "Come on, you two. The night doesn't wait." Quinlan clenched his fists, a haunting déjà vu echoing in his mind. The last time they had strayed too far, the last time hope flickered dimly before it was pitch dark. The laugh lines around Aiden's smile burned into his memory, as Quinlan felt time stretching, pulling at something primal inside him. Tonight changed everything, and within that promise lay shadows that threatened their very lives. Scene 20. The haunting escalates. As the wind howled like a forlorn spirit outside, the flickering flames of the campfire cast dancing shadows across the tense faces of the group. Quinlan leaned forward, glancing over at Fiora, who was tugging at her wild curls nervously. What if it's true? What if the stories, he started, but Fiora interrupted, her voice edged with frustration. Stories, Quinlan. We're here on a ghost hunt, not on some wild goose chase for fairy tales. Her eyes glinted with a mixture of fear and determination, and the way the shadows played on her face made her look both fierce and vulnerable. What do you think that thing was, then? Quinlan shot back, gesturing wildly as storm clouds roiled above them, blocking the moonlight. You want to pretend it doesn't exist? That it's just some campfire folklore? An awkward silence draped over them, thick and heavy like the air before a storm. Around the circle, the other friends shifted uneasily. Louisa, ever practical, spoke up. Maybe we should consider taking this seriously for once. I don't know about you all, but I feel like we should stick together. Zane snorted, tossing a twig into the fire. Stick together? You mean huddle while we wait for whatever ghost is out there to decide who it wants to pick off next? Fiora's eyes darted over to Zane, irritation sharp in her tone. What's your deal, Zane? You think this is some joke? Before he could respond, the unmistakable crack of a branch echoed through the air. The group fell silent, instinctively drawing closer. The atmosphere shifted, thickening with unspoken fears. Let's tell ghost stories, Kira suggested, her voice a thread of brightness slicing through the tension, though her smile felt forced. That'll lighten the mood. Quinlan launched into a tale, his voice carrying a mix of bravado and mischief. So there's this legend about a phantom bride who roams the woods. Laughter broke the tension briefly, but the moment shifted again as the wind picked up, rattling the leaves like ominous whispers. After a few stories and lighter moments, Louisa looked pensive, casting a sidelong glance at Fiora. You have to admit, Quinlan's lucky. Got some good material for his next ghost hunting video. But seriously, what do we do if that thing really wants us gone? Quinlan's grin faltered as he caught Fiora's glance, and the atmosphere shifted once more. Maybe we should just... Before he could finish, Fiora snapped. You want to what, Quinlan? Run like the others? You can't keep playing the knight when it's not working. Her words hung thick in the air, and Quinlan felt a deep pang of something regret, perhaps as he met her gaze. Then Zane chimed in, a sardonic smirk plastered on his face. Guys, let's just agree it's not Quinlan's fault if the ghost eats him first. Laughter erupted, but the danger hung just beneath the surface, an uneasy balance between sanity and madness, life and death. Fiora shot Zane a glare, but her annoyance seemed to fade as she turned back to Quinlan. You think you can save everyone, but what if you can't? We need to figure this out together, not let you act like the hero. Quinlan took a breath, the weight of her words sinking in deeper than he would admit. I don't want to lose anyone else. Their gazes held for a moment, and there was a tenderness beneath the tension that felt electric, almost palpable, as a low growl echoed from the dark woods. The warmth of the friendship they had, however fragile, was juxtaposed against the urgent chill in the air. Fiora stepped closer, lowering her voice. Look, all I'm saying is, we need to know what we're really up against, for all our sakes. They were interrupted by a shrill scream cutting through the night, yanking every one of them from their moment of vulnerability and spinning them into chaos. Kira's eyes widened, transforming from determination to pure terror in a heartbeat. It's coming from the trail! Stay put! Quinlan shouted, already sprinting toward the sound, his heart pounding furiously against his chest. He hated himself for not rushing to help, but something warned him they were being watched. As they dashed into the night, cerulean dark filled their surroundings, tension thickening with every step. An entity manifested in streaks of shadow amidst the trees, and Quinlan's heart raced with the knowledge that their lives hung in the balance. Run, Quinlan shouted, fear rippling across the group. Beneath the yells and the rustling branches, Fiora gripped Quinlan's arm, desperation etched across her face. What do we do? We're not going to let it win. A fleeting thought crossed Quinlan's mind as reality twisted again. This wasn't merely a ghost story anymore. It was life or death for all of them. I'll do anything to protect you, he promised, though the darkness loomed and the shadows seeped into their resolve. Scene 21. Friendships on edge. The wind howled outside, rattling the old, disheveled cabin nestled deep in the woods. Shadows danced along the walls like restless spirits, mimicking the tension that brewed among the 9 friends gathered in the living room. Quinlan Vex stood with his arms crossed, his brow furrowed, his customary jesting spirit lost to the oppressive atmosphere. "Do you really think this is funny, Aiden?" Quinlan shot out, his voice slicing through the murmurs of the group. "You almost got Sam killed out there." Aiden, leaning indolently against the cracked leather couch, rolled his eyes. "It was a joke, Quinn. Lighten up. Ghosts only kill if you let them." "Is that supposed to comfort us?" Sam interjected, her hands twitching nervously. "We don't even know how to stop this thing. And now we've got you tossing around bad puns like it's some poorly scripted horror movie." "Aiden wouldn't know a real horror if it bit him on the nose," Fiora chimed in with a nervous chuckle, trying to alleviate the tension. But the unease lingered, settling heavily on her shoulders like a damp blanket. Light flickered as the wind pressed against the windows, and the looming presence of the entity outside felt more pronounced than ever. "Do you really think this is the best time for jokes?" Zoe said sharply, her eyes darting toward the window as it rattled again, echoing her agitation. "We aren't in the mood, Aiden." Aiden pushed away from the couch, the casual demeanor slipping as frustration flashed across his features. "What do you want from me? A tearful confession? I'm just trying to keep this not-so-festive gathering from deteriorating into complete despair." "No, what we want," Quinlan snapped, "is a proactive plan instead of a clown act."